happened in a
please!
heartbeat.
Don't
One of those
go!
moments where the air feels heavier, where something ordinary suddenly turns sharply wrong. A royal guard froze mid-step as Princess Charlotte, calm as a child heading to art class, walked straight toward an unmarked gray van guided by a man who had no clearance, no escort badge, and absolutely no right to be alone with her. And when the door of that van began to slide shut, the guard's hand moved instinctively toward his rifle, because he knew something was terribly off. If moments like this leave you wondering what really happened behind palace walls, stick with us. Tap like, hit subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves deep, emotional royal family mysteries. Trust me, today's story unfolds in ways even the palace didn't expect. Staff Sergeant David Mitchell has stood guard at Windsor Castle long enough to recognize silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that warns you something is shifting ever so slightly out of place. Most days, his post was predictable. Staff coming and going, polished floors, carefully timed schedules, the quiet hum of a place that looked calm on the outside but ran on rigid precision behind closed doors. That afternoon, the world felt normal until it didn't. Mitchell first noticed a van before he even noticed a child heading toward it. A dull gray, civilian style, the kind that blended into city traffic but looked completely foreign on royal grounds. No insignia, no badge, no escort driver in uniform, no scheduled arrival. That alone was enough to prick at the edges of his training. He checked the access logs out of habit. Nothing. No maintenance request. No delivery. No authorized transport. Then the passenger door opened, and Mitchell's breath locked in his chest for half a second. It was Camilla's son, well-dressed, confident walk, hands in plain sight, but without a visitor badge, without clearance, without a reason to be anywhere near a child royal, alone. Mitchell didn't move yet. He watched. He listened to the silence. He felt that old instinct. Something's not right. And then Princess Charlotte appeared, a small silhouette at the far end of the stone corridor, clutching a folder of her drawings, ponytail swinging gently with every step. She wasn't running, wasn't scared, just walking the way a child walks when they think their day is still ordinary. But Mitchell felt his stomach drop. Camilla's son leaned down, said something soft enough that Mitchell couldn't hear it. Charlotte paused. She looked up at him with the trust that children naturally offer adults who smile and speak calmly. Then she nodded. It was a nod that broke the last, fragile layer of normalcy. Mitchell began to walk. Not fast. Fast would draw attention. But steady, purposeful, the stride of a man who had made a decision and could not be talked out of it. His hand moved toward his radio. 2 quick taps. A silent alert. Command would hear it instantly. But even before the system responded, Mitchell already knew what the answer would be. No clearance. Unauthorized vehicle. Unauthorized contact. Charlotte was now only a meter away from the van. Its side door slid open automatically, too smoothly, too ready, like this had been planned. The interior was dark, cold-looking, empty except for bench seats. No car seat. No approved child transport equipment. Charlotte hesitated for the tiniest moment. She glanced behind her, just a flicker of uncertainty. The kind children feel when something suddenly doesn't match what adults have told them. But the man's hand was already on her shoulder. Not aggressive, not forceful, just guiding. And she stepped in. That's when Mitchell's hand wrapped around his rifle. Not to raise it, not to threaten, but to warn. A gesture every guard on those grounds understood. This vehicle does not leave. Not with a princess inside. Not today. Not ever. The driver's eyes widened behind the windshield as he saw him approach. His hand twitched toward the gear shift. Vehicle halt. Mitchell's voice cut through the courtyard like a blade. Sharp, clean, unwavering. The driver froze. The engine stayed on, but the car didn't move. Mitchell raised his left hand, palm out. Universal stop command. His right hand stayed firmly on his weapon. Engine off. The driver didn't obey. Inside the van, Charlotte sat motionless, hands folded neatly in her lap. The picture of innocence. The exact kind of innocence a guard swore to protect with his life. At that moment, the tension wrapped itself around the courtyard like invisible wire. Then Camilla's son stepped out, his smile too smooth, too confident. "All good here, Sergeant," he said lightly. "Just helping Charlotte with a little family errand. Queen Camilla asked me to collect her." Mitchell didn't blink, didn't nod, didn't smile. "Where is your clearance?" he asked. The man's smile thinned. "It's a family matter." Mitchell's voice didn't budge. "Minor royals require 2 escorts and confirmed guardian approval. Where is your clearance?" The man exhaled sharply, irritation slipping through his calm exterior. "Sergeant, I'm not a stranger. I'm her step-grandfather's son." "You're not on duty," Mitchell replied. "You're not logged. You're not authorized. Step away from a vehicle." For a moment, the courtyard felt painfully still. The man's jaw tightened. The driver shifted nervously. And inside the van, Charlotte watched silently through tinted glass, eyes wide, absorbing everything. Through his earpiece, Mitchell heard backup moving into position. 2 guards approached quietly, one on each side, forming a human barrier around the vehicle. Then came the clicking of heels. Sharp, quick, not ceremonial, urgent. Queen Camilla. Her expression was controlled, but her eyes carried heat. "What is happening here?" she demanded. Mitchell bowed his head slightly, never removing his hand from his rifle. "Your Majesty, I have an unauthorized vehicle and undocumented movement involving Princess Charlotte." "I authorize it," Camilla snapped. "I asked my son to bring her to me. There is no documentation, no escort, no guardian approval. Her schedule shows she was to meet Princess Catherine in 20 minutes. Camilla's irritation spiked. "This is a simple family visit, Sergeant." "With respect," Mitchell replied, "protocols protect royal children. They are not optional." For the first time, Camilla's confidence faltered. "Stand. Down." Mitchell's voice stayed steady. "With respect, ma'am, I cannot." Silence. Not quiet, dangerous silence. And then, from the far in the corridor, a voice broke through. "What's going on?" "Princess Catherine," followed by Prince William. Mitchell had seen William angry before, never like this. Not loud, not explosive, but cold, controlled, scary in its calm. William approached the van slowly, like a storm deciding where to strike. "Open the door," he said. Not a request, a command. Camilla's son hesitated. William didn't repeat himself. The door slid open. Charlotte's small face appeared, uncertainty trembling in her eyes. She wasn't crying, but she was holding herself too still, the way children do when they're trying to be brave. Catherine climbed in instantly. "Are you hurt? Did anyone frighten you?" Charlotte shook her head. "I thought you knew Mommy. He told me you said it was okay." Catherine's heart cracked visibly, even if she kept her voice gentle. "I didn't know, sweetheart." William's stare shifted to Camilla's son. "You lied to my daughter." The man swallowed. "I didn't think approval was necessary. You took my child into an unmarked, unauthorized vehicle without telling her parents. That is not a misunderstanding." William took a step closer. "That is a violation." The courtyard felt colder. With a clipped hand gesture, William called over additional guards. "Escort him to security." Full statement. "He doesn't leave the building." Camilla bristled. "William, this is excessive." "No," he said, voice sharp as steel. "It's protective." Then he looked at Mitchell. "You stopped this?" Mitchell straightened. "Yes, sir. You could have avoided the confrontation." "I could have," Mitchell replied quietly. "But protecting the family includes protecting them from mistakes made by the family." William's expression softened, just for a heartbeat. "Thank you, Sergeant." As William and Catherine walked Charlotte away, one parent on each side, hands tightly holding hers, Mitchell remained at his post. Perfectly still, perfectly alert, exactly where a protector belonged. The moment Princess Charlotte stepped into the van, the world felt different, quieter, dimmer, and strangely hollow. She wasn't the kind of child who panicked easily. She'd grown up around cameras, ceremonies, and moments where she had to be calm simply because everyone expected her to be. But inside that unmarked van, she felt something she couldn't quite explain. Like she walked into a room where the air wasn't the right temperature. Charlotte sat exactly where she was told. Second row. Seat on the right. Hands folded neatly in her lap. Her school folder, full of the drawings she'd been excited to show her mother, pressed against her knees. She stared at the tinted window, seeing nothing but a blur reflection of herself. Even her reflection looked unsure. Mr. Tom, Camilla's son, slid into the seat beside her. His voice was soft, almost too soft, like he was trying not to startle her. "It's just a little surprise for Granny Camilla," he said. A surprise. She liked surprises. Her father's jokes. Her mother's warm hugs. Her teachers bringing in birthday treats. But this didn't feel like those surprises. She glanced toward the front of the van. The driver never turned around, never smiled, never said hello. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, knuckles pale. She didn't know much about grown-up body language, but she'd seen enough nervous adults to recognize when someone wanted to be anywhere else. The door slid shut with a firm click, a sound that echoed. Charlotte swallowed. This didn't feel right. "Mommy knows I'm going?" she asked, keeping her voice small. "Yes," Tom replied too quickly. "She knows. Your father, too." Charlotte nodded, but something tugged at her thoughts. Her mother always sent someone she trusted to collect her. A nanny, a guard, a familiar staff member. Never someone she barely knew. And never in a car that didn't have the little royal crest on the window. She was 10, old enough to notice when things didn't line up. Still, she stayed quiet. Children like her were raised to be polite, composed, respectful. But inside, something was whispering. Ask again. Ask again. She didn't. Not yet. Instead, she glanced at her drawings again. A watercolor painting of a garden. A sketch of her dog. Things that should have made her happy. But her hands felt cold, and the drawing suddenly felt fragile in her lap. Outside, Mitchell, the guard, was walking toward them. She didn't know him by name, but she recognized the uniformed figure, the steady posture, the way guards looked at her with quiet responsibility, a kind of watchfulness that had protected her since she was a baby. He raised a hand. The van didn't move. Tom sighed under his breath. Oh, for heaven's sake. Charlotte's heartbeat thudded softly in her chest. She wasn't scared of the guard. She was scared of the fact that he seemed scared, not panicked. Guards never panicked, but alert in a way she'd only seen twice in her life. Once when a fire alarm went off during a rehearsal at the palace, and once when George had gone missing in the garden, and everyone assumed the worst before finding him behind a hedge. She remembered the adults' expressions then, tight, controlled, stretched thin. Tom leaned forward slightly. Don't worry. Adults make everything dramatic. But Charlotte's eyes were glued to the guard's hand on his rifle. Mr. Tom wasn't telling the truth. She felt in her chest like a knot tightening, and something else bothered her. Why did her mother look behind her, searching for adults? Every time they went somewhere new, why did her father always ask who picked her up, who drove her, who escorted her? Because it mattered. Because one wrong move could be dangerous. Charlotte hadn't understood the full weight of that until today. She sat completely still, listening to the outside world as if her ears were pressing against the tinted glass. She heard footsteps, fast ones, voices, sharp ones, heard her own breathing picking up in tiny little gasps. Tom muttered under his breath, "This is ridiculous." Then she heard the van door being tugged, voices raised, arguments she didn't understand. Something inside her squeezed. Where is Mommy? Where is Daddy? Her mother always appeared right when she needed her. Her father always stepped in when something didn't feel right. Always. The door suddenly slid open, sunlight cutting into the dim interior, and Charlotte flinched at the brightness. Then she saw her mother. Princess Catherine didn't smile. She didn't say hello first. She climbed inside and cupped Charlotte's face with both hands. "Are you hurt? Tell me, are you hurt?" Charlotte shook her head fast, relieved tears pressing behind her eyes. "No. Mommy, he said you knew, he said it was okay." Catherine's throat tightened. Charlotte felt it in the way her mother's hands trembled for a split second before steadying again. "I didn't know," Catherine whispered. "You did nothing wrong." Charlotte pressed her forehead against her mother's shoulder, drawing comfort from the familiar warmth, the faint scent of her perfume, the safe rhythm of her breathing. Then she saw her father appear behind her mother, tall, calm, eyes sharp. The quiet intensity in his gaze always meant the same thing. Something is wrong, and I will fix it. Charlotte slipped her small hand into her father's without thinking. He squeezed back, softly but firmly. A promise she didn't need words to understand. Did you feel safe? Catherine asked again. Charlotte looked down, then up, then shook her head. I kept waiting for you to come, she said quietly. He said you knew, but you weren't there. That felt wrong. Her mother kissed her forehead. Her father pulled her closer. And in that moment, Charlotte realized something important. Something she hadn't been old enough to truly grasp until now. Safety wasn't just about locks and guards in big buildings. Safety was a feeling that came from being with the people who truly protected her. Catherine's arm wrapped around her. William's hand rested protectively on her back. She leaned into them both, and for the first time since stepping into the van, her breathing slowed. The knot in her chest loosened. She wasn't alone. She wasn't confused anymore. She was safe. Behind her, the voices continued. The arguments, the accusations, the defenses. But none of that mattered to her now. None of that could touch her. Later that night, she would sit by her bedroom window and stare out toward the courtyard. She would see a guard standing where Mitchell had stood. A different man, but the same posture, the same stillness, the same silent promise. And she would press her palm to the cold glass and whisper a soft thank you, one meant for both the guard who stopped the van and the instinct inside her that had quietly whispered the truth all along. The moment Prince William stepped into the corridor, the air changed so sharply, so instantly, that even the guard straightened without thinking. William did not storm in. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. Instead, he moved with that unnerving calm that only comes from someone who knows exactly how dangerous a situation could have been. His footsteps were steady, echoing across the stone as he approached the van. Each one deliberate, controlled, almost too quiet for a man whose entire life was lived beneath a global spotlight. But today, he didn't walk like a prince. He walked like a father. Catherine was already inside the van, her voice low and trembling with that rare kind of fear only a parent understands. Charlotte clung to her, small fingers gripping her mother's sleeve with silent urgency. William's gaze swept over the scene, taking in every detail with military-trained precision. Camilla was there, standing stiffly, her expression tight. Her son hovered uncertainly behind her, phone in hand, face drained of confidence. Guards formed a half-circle, not aggressive, but unmistakably protective. And in the center, Mitchell, hand on his rifle, resolute. William reached the van door and stopped. His shadow filled the frame. "Open it," he said. No rise in volume, no anger, but the tone alone made every adult within earshot freeze. Camilla's son hesitated. For one reckless moment, he glanced at his mother as if waiting for her to intervene. But Camilla didn't move quickly enough, and the hesitation sealed his fate. William repeated himself, not louder, just sharper. "Open the door." The man obeyed. The door slid open, revealing Charlotte curled into Catherine's side. William's jaw tightened. His hands closed into subtle fists at his sides. Tiny, controlled signs of the storm he was holding back. Catherine spoke gently. She said she thought we approved this. William's eyes flicked to Camilla's son. "You told her that?" The man swallowed. "It was just a misunderstanding. Your mother wanted—" "No," William cut in. "You told my daughter something that wasn't true to get her into a vehicle she should have never entered." Tom opened his mouth again, but William raised a hand. The gesture alone silenced him. "Don't," William warned. He turned back to Charlotte, reaching out and brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She leaned forward, wrapping her arms around his neck. William closed his eyes briefly, a single second where relief washed through him like a wave. Then he pulled back and stood upright. The temperature in the courtyard seemed to drop. He faced Camilla next. "Explain," he said simply. It was not a request. Camilla inhaled sharply, shoulders stiffening. I asked my son to bring her to me. We planned to have tea together. It was harmless. Harmless? William repeated, as though testing the word. You bypassed security. You avoided documentation. You sent an unauthorized vehicle for my daughter, and you say it was harmless. His voice remained low, but now every syllable carried an edge of cold steel. Camilla lifted her chin. I'm her grandmother. I don't need clearance to see her. William's eyes darkened, just slightly, just enough. Every adult needs clearance when it comes to the safety of my children. Every single one. Catherine climbed out of the van, holding Charlotte tightly. Her voice was gentler than William's, but laced with equal resolve. You didn't tell us, she said to Camilla. And you know the rules. You know how these things work. Camilla stepped forward. It was only tea. Catherine's voice dropped to a whisper, but it was far more powerful than shouting. Tea doesn't require lying to a child. Camilla's breath caught. For a moment, she looked genuinely stunned, as if this entire confrontation had somehow blindsided her. But then her expression shifted into something defensive. You're making this bigger than it is. William exhaled through his nose, the kind of breath he usually only took during diplomatic meetings when someone said something particularly foolish. Let me be clear, he said. You arranged an unlocked removal of a minor royal. In any other situation, this would be treated as an abduction attempt. Camilla's face drained of color. That's absurd. But accurate, William said quietly. You circumvented safeguards meant to protect my daughter, and you involved your son in it. Did you think no one would notice? That a child could be moved without protocols? Without people asking questions? He stepped closer, his presence towering, not physically, but emotionally. You put her in danger. Camilla's eyes widened, but William didn't let her speak. You put her in danger. The courtyard became painfully silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Guards exchanged subtle, tense glances. Mitchell didn't move a muscle. Catherine held Charlotte tighter. Camilla's son looked like he wanted to disappear into the stone floor. Finally, William turned to the head of security. Escort him to the West Wing. Full statement. He doesn't leave until I say so. Tom sputtered. This is ridiculous. I'm being treated like a criminal. William didn't look at him. If anyone else had done what you did, they would be in handcuffs. Camilla stepped forward, voice trembling with anger. William, you cannot treat my son like this. William turned slowly, eyes cold as winter stone. Watch me. Camilla flinched, actually flinched. For a moment, mother and stepson stood frozen, surrounded yet completely alone. William, please, she whispered, softer now. This is family. No, William replied. Family protects children. Family follows rules. Family communicates. What happened today? This was a violation of all of that. He looked at Catherine. She nodded. Their unity, unbreakable, silent, absolute, filled the space between them. Camilla seemed to shrink slightly, the weight of her mistake settling onto her shoulders at last. You will not have unsupervised access to my children, William said firmly. Not after this. Not until trust is rebuilt. William. Not another word. Charlotte, watching all of this from her mother's arms, whispered, Daddy? William turned instantly, his expression melting into gentleness. He reached out and brushed her cheek. You're safe, he murmured. That's all that matters. And that was it. The confrontation that would never appear in tabloids. The argument that would never make a headline. The family fracture that would be whispered about behind palace doors, but never spoken of publicly. William placed one hand on Charlotte's back, one on Catherine's shoulder. Let's go, he said softly. And together, the three of them walked away, leaving silence and consequences. Behind them, I end the days that followed the incident. Windsor Castle felt different. Not chaotic, not panicked, but heavy, like the walls themselves had absorbed the echo of what nearly happened. The staff moved quietly, whispers clinging to the edges of hallways. Guards who usually joked during breaks stood a little straighter, spoke a little less. Even the birds that circled the courtyard seemed to fly with a sharper, more watchful path, because everyone understood something important. The system had been tested and almost failed, and when royal security falters, even for a moment, the consequences echo far beyond palace doors. In a private room lined with old portraits and thick carpets that muted every footstep, the senior officials of palace security met with Prince William. The meeting wasn't loud. There was no shouting, no dramatics, just an unmistakable intensity that made even the most seasoned officers shift in their seats. William rarely showed anger. Today, he didn't have to. His calmness alone was enough to make the room feel colder. He didn't demand resignations. He didn't accuse individuals. Instead, he asked a simple question, one that stung worse than any accusation. How did someone with no clearance get close enough to touch my daughter? No one had a comfortable answer. Protocols had been followed on paper. Schedules had been checked on paper. But the weakness wasn't the rules. It was an assumption, in trust, in the belief that people inside the palace, especially those connected to the royal family, would never misuse proximity. That belief died the moment Charlotte stepped into that van. William listened to every explanation, every technical detail, every procedural excuse. Then he leaned forward slightly, hands on the table, strengthen every point of entry, review every clearance list, reassess who has access to my children, and retrain every guard to prioritize instinct over hierarchy. His words were simple. His authority was absolute. When he stood to leave, not a single officer doubted. The palace would never operate the same way again. While William handled the security overhaul, Catherine faced a different battlefield, the emotional one. That night, after Charlotte had finally fallen asleep, Catherine sat alone in the dim glow of a bedside lamp, holding her daughter's abandoned drawings. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them, a watercolor garden, a pencil sketch of her dog, a colorful abstract she couldn't quite decipher. All so innocent, all created before Charlotte learned that even familiar adults could be misleading. Catherine felt protective fire rising inside her, not loud, not explosive, but deep, like an anchor settling firmly into ground. She had always been protective, always cautious. But now she felt something sharper, a new vow forming inside her. Never again would someone else decide where her child was taken. Never again would someone else twist the truth to manipulate her child's trust. Never again would she ignore her instinct, not even for family. She stayed awake long after William returned from his security briefing, her eyes tracing the shadows on the walls. When he sat beside her, she leaned her head against his shoulder. She kept saying she waited for me, Catherine whispered. She knew something was wrong. She felt it. William wrapped an arm around her, pulling her closer. Because you taught her to listen to that feeling. Catherine exhaled. And I'll teach her more now. William kissed the top of her head. We both will. In that quiet room, two parents made a silent promise, one stronger than any royal protocol. Across the palace, Camilla had not slept since the confrontation. Publicly, she carried on, smiling at events, shaking hands, offering the same polite phrases she'd used for decades. But privately, she felt the shift. The trust that had once existed, fragile as it was now fractured. In meetings, staff avoided lingering in the same room with her son. Guards stiffened when he approached the corridor. Even longtime associates spoke to her with a different tone, cautious, measured, almost formal, a subtle, unmistakable distancing. The queen consort had never been powerless, but now she felt the weight of consequences she hadn't anticipated. Her intentions, whatever they truly were, no longer mattered. The damage was done. Trust, once cracked, did not mend neatly. When she passed William in the corridor the next morning, he greeted her politely but with unmistakable distance. Not hostility, not disrespect, just a wall. And Camilla felt the full impact of it. A wall built not from anger, but from necessity. That was worse. For Staff Sergeant David Mitchell, the days after the incident moved strangely. He didn't revel in praise. He didn't brag. He didn't even tell his family what had happened. Protocol forbade it. But within the guards' barracks, he became something rare, a quiet legend. He had done the unthinkable. He had stopped a member of the royal family, not out of defiance, not out of ego, but because of rules, the instincts, and the oath demanded it. When he was called to the private office for his commendation, he tried to downplay it. "I was doing my job, sir." The head of security smiled faintly. "Most people never look past titles, Sergeant." "You did." Mitchell didn't respond. He didn't need to. Later that day, he returned to his post. Another guard was there, nodding respectfully before stepping aside. Mitchell stood where he always stood, back straight, eyes sharp, vigilant, steady. But now, something felt different. He wasn't just guarding a castle. He was guarding a child who had looked at him through tinted glass and trusted him without knowing his name. And that mattered more than any medal. A week later, Charlotte sat by her window again, legs crossed, chin resting on her hands. She wasn't thinking about the van anymore. She wasn't thinking about Mr. Tom or the arguments in the corridor. She was thinking about the guard, the man whose eyes had told her, even from a distance, that she wasn't alone. Her mother knocked gently. "Sweetheart, ready for dinner?" Charlotte nodded. "Mommy, do guards always know?" Catherine hesitated. "Know what, darling?" "When something's wrong." Catherine walked over and sat beside her. "Not always, but the good ones, they see things other people miss." Charlotte turned her gaze toward the courtyard again. "I want to be like that, to know when something feels wrong." "You already do," Catherine said softly. "And that's a gift." Charlotte smiled, a small, brave smile, because for the first time, she understood something deep. Being protected didn't make her weak. It made her aware. It made her strong. 3 weeks later, when the palace released its quiet, carefully worded internal memo about new protocols, no one needed an explanation. Everyone already knew its origin. No headlines captured the truth. No tabloids knew how close things had come. No camera saw the moment when a guard placed duty above hierarchy. But inside the palace walls, the story lived on, spoken quietly, remembered faithfully. A reminder that security wasn't about ceremony. Protection wasn't about uniforms. And loyalty wasn't about titles. Sometimes, the strongest shield between danger and innocence is a single person who refuses to look away.